Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to the East-West Show. Once again, we're talking about water. I'm so glad that my audiences mostly are Southern Californian residents are getting lots of concerns about water due to the efforts that shed lights by these wonderful water officials. We have Mr. Tony Zampiello, a water master of California, and also we have Mr. Ken Manning, Water Quality Authority of Southern California. Both of them together, we have done, must be no less than 8 or 9 shows together in a row for a year span in a row. And the more we're getting lots of emails from my audiences to make me quite a satisfaction. Oh, my show works. And then we really did something for California. Every time, especially when there's a little rain, I receive the email, say, hey, Jack, you want to check with those 2 guys or 2 officials or 2 water guys, they say, about California water. How's the water now? And then they say, hey, how about now? And how about now? That kind of thing. To those of my audience who call, they either call the office number, 3889 number, or even they call my cell phone number, because my cell phone is public, right? So they're asking, when are we going to do the next show about water? Are we over with the crisis? So that's why we're here again to both of you. Welcome to the show. Mr. Ken Manning of Water Quality Authority of California, and Mr. Tony Zampiello of Water Master of California. Both are water. Oh, now, by doing lots of water, I'm becoming a water man.
That's right.
I feel I'm very much watered. Very good. So, to both of you, welcome to the show.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
to be here.
Thank you to have us.
At G&E TV, especially at this show, I feel obligated to get involved with what it is a first necessity of our day-to-day life, and what the state calls for, what Mother Nature calls for, and in combined what we want to do, right? So, and once again, want to talk about California water. Question is, with the quote-unquote wet winter over, how did we do? And then we're moving about how are we doing now? And then how shall we do this coming summer? And lastly, we're talking about our mandate. So how about that?
Okay.
All right.
Well, sure. I can tell
How
you
did we do with the water?
how locally how we've done is that I think the last time we had the show, the key well in the basin had reached a historic low of about 172 feet above mean sea level. And as we sit here now, it's gone up to 183 feet above mean sea level. So we've seen the rain that we got was for the valley floor, the long-term average is about 16 inches, and we got about 21 inches. And we do still have some water in the canyon to spread. But what we saw this year is that the key well didn't rise as much as we thought it would because the water shed was so dry. So in previous shows, I've talked about the fact that we've pulled out of our savings account or storage account about 50 feet.
Yes.
And with the water that we've gotten from the rain and the water that we have in the canyon that we're going to spread, this year we'll replace about 15 of the 50 feet. Or about 30%.
Oh, only 15 of the 50 feet that we have lost?
Yes. So that means we would need a couple of, at least 2 more wet years to get back to where we were before the...
To be honest with you, Ken, all the emails and telephone calls I received, all together, they sound kind of like optimistic tone, say we're over.
Yeah.
And then they say, how about now? How about now? Meaning, how about now? Is it over now? Okay, now it's got to be over, like that.
Yeah.
So on learning those numbers, reached from 71, 75 to 85?
From about 172 to 183. So we've gained 11 feet, and then with the storage in the canyon, we'll gain about another 4. So that's 15 feet back, and we had lost 50. So we're still about 70% down from where we were as far as basin storage.
I see. It is still a critical situation.
For us, especially if we get a dry year next year again.
For me too, because I'm a water man. I think like a water man already. I'm just going, not just a man opening my tap and wash my face and then go. I want to think about it. My audience, quite a few of my audiences think that way. They're starting that way, which is good. Right? Last time when we mentioned about the El Nino that was supposed to hold water, which later on did not turn out into our favor, and then followed by another El Nino, and did something which made the numbers he just mentioned. I thought we are over. Even I thought we were over. So question is, when was the year, you mentioned about 50 feet low, right? When was the year we were at 100?
When we were back full was 5 years ago before we came into the drought. We were at about 240 feet, which is very close to the top of our operating range when all of this began. Because if you remember, the 10, 11, 11, 12 winter was a pretty good winter. And so we gained some ground and we weren't as low as we are now. Now, the confusing thing for the consumers is that the state picture, the picture in Northern California, is quite different, but their method of delivery and storage of water is a lot different too.
I think in essence, what I think your viewers need to understand is it depends upon the definition and where you are regionally. In Southern California, I'll have to say that the crisis is over. That is that there aren't emergency procedures, because we did have a good rain year and it did help us catch up a little bit. But the drought is not over. And even if somebody says the drought is over, we know in California in general that 7 out of every 10 years are going to be dry. That we're only going to get good rain, a better than average rain, 3 out of every 10 years, based on the hydrograph of what California's done over its history. So we don't know what next year is going to bring, but it very likely could bring us back into a drought, and that this year will be viewed over a long term as an anomaly.
I see.
So we need to make sure that those that are watching understand that the drought itself is never going to be over in Southern California, especially. That in California, we need to protect our water, we need to change the way we use water. So all those things that were begun during the drought need to be continued.
In other words, what he is saying is that the shortage years, number of years, are twice than the good years, or more than twice of good years. Even it has been the picture, like say, we have more good years rather than bad years, we're still okay because we have reserve. Right. Now we're facing a situation that we can, for the period that we can foresee, it is 7 out of 10 being bad years, only 3 out of 10 being good years. So we're never going to make ends meet.
Well, what we have to do here in California, and what Tony and I have been involved with in working with other water professionals around the state, is working on strategies to try and find out ways that during these wet years, I mean, all of us are aware of what happened at Oroville and all the water we lost. That's a shame that we lose so much water. But what we're trying to do is figure out a way that we can move that water further south, get it stored in underground basins and in above ground reservoirs, so that we can, during these dry years, pull from those reserves so we don't have to pull as much from the groundwater. So that overall, over a 10-year period, we're able to capture enough water to make this whole system work. But we have to be very cautious during those 7 years that we're dry, not to use too much water. That means not just in your home, but also agriculture and industry. Everybody's got to watch the way they use water.
Exactly. All right, thank you for the info. That is very important info to bring to my audience, especially those of you who send me email asking concern about California water. That is the answer. The answer is the quote-unquote crisis is over, but the dry season is not. And speaking of the dry season, we do have to have a reserve, which now is not sufficient. We did have some makeup, yet only 15 out of 50, which is something like 30%.
Yes.
Less than 30%. Less than 30%. That's all. All right. So, my dear friends, today with me are the water guy, the water authorities, Mr. Ken Manning, Mr. Tony M. Zeppiello, both from California, about water. We're doing the update about what we did. What did we do during the quote-unquote winter? And then when next segment, we're going to talk about how are we doing, what are we doing currently at this moment as we speak. Stay with us, please. Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to the show. As a matter of fact, discussion once again about our California water. Especially to be more specific, we're talking about SoCal water. SoCal water is the water of California waters, and is the most important water subject of our California water. During the seasons of the drought, we suffered a lot, whole California. During the wet winter, such as last winter, we had a little bit of water. One of the reasons was that I received lots of calls from my audiences and emails, mostly emails, and even the social media, asking me how about water. They took me as a water guy because I do so many water shows. As a matter of fact, they are the water guys. Mr. Ken Manning, Water Quality Authority of California, and Mr. Tony Zeppiello, Water Master of California. They are together talking about the water situation now. And the second reason I scheduled a show for today is that I heard from one of the mainstream media, quote unquote, calls on understanding. I believe that's misleading. Say, hey guys, the drought is over. Yeah. So the drought is over, not over. So we are here knocking doors, see if it is over. Yeah. So as a conclusion for that question, the crisis might be, the drought is not.
Well, I think we need to stop talking about the word drought, especially in Southern California, and just say that going forward with the number of people in the state and the needs for the demand for the water, we're going to have these periods where it's going to be dry and it's going to be wet. So when you look at the gross amount of water, if it's logistically managed right and we can get it into certain places and the facilities exist, then we can manage through those dry periods. But the part of what we suffer from, I've been through it, I guess 4 different droughts in my career, is that the customers do really good to help us through it. But then when you start to come out of it, they feel, oh, well, I can water a little extra, I can do this, do that. Well, what I've been saying through the 5 years is I've been telling people, if you could live for those 5 years with that small amount of water, you can live with that amount going forward.
All right, okay, good point, yeah. Good point. By logic, it is a good point. Yeah. And you feel the same way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, if you lived in Sacramento or north of Sacramento up in Northern California, the situation's different. They got a lot more water than we did in Southern California, and their reservoirs are full and their groundwater aquifers are full. And for them, they can actually say the drought is over. But for those of us in Southern California, actually anybody who's below the Sacramento Delta, anybody who lives south of the Delta, the drought is never going to be over. It's going to be continuous. We're going to have
exactly like Tony says, right?
Exactly.
It is the when you compare yourself, you feel okay. You survived with the short years, with the mandate, whatever, and you don't lose an arm and leg. You still smile the same smile, right? So you keep the same wife, and probably you want to go on. That's a good point.
Yeah.
right? That's good. All right, I want to call upon my audience to take this take. The take is that with the climate change, with the global warming, which is controversial, even though we'd better watch ourselves, right? And now the answer is that, well, regardless whether they say the drought is over or not over, to be conserved, right? To save water is always a good thing to do.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now a bigger question, little bigger question. Compare between the capability of reserving water to the quantities that Mother Nature has given us. Have we lost more or kept more?
Well, this year was an interesting year. I think Tony early on said that we didn't get as much water coming out of the canyon as we thought we were going to get here in the San Gabriel Valley. I think most of California experienced a similar dilemma. You might go back a couple of, maybe even a year and a half when we did a show. I talked about the pie chart of where water goes in California, and literally 50% of the water in California that falls out of the sky, half of that water goes to nature. Because all those plants need water, all of the streams, the flows. That happens automatically every year. 50% of the water that falls
goes back
in California,
to Mother Nature.
That's right.
Already.
Because it's been so dry, I would say this year it had to have been closer to 60-65%.
Oh, I see.
Actually went to Mother Nature. So up here, what we experienced here in the San Gabriel Valley was normally water would hit those mountains and it would flow down to the river and we captured behind the dams up in the valley.
Because you have a deficit.
Yeah, well, and that's what happens. The water flows downhill. But this case, the ground was soaking it up like a sponge. And every time we got a rain, we weren't getting the water coming down the canyon and into the rivers. It was going into the soil and into the plants. Evapotranspiration is what they call that. That happens every year, but this year it was just much more than anybody predicted. So we didn't get as much water out of that large rainy year as we thought we were.
Even though during the wet winter.
Yeah, even though we had a wet winter, hard to say that.
Okay.
Even though we had the wet winter, it wasn't as plentiful a water supply as we thought we were going to get. Now, for rains that are coming down now, we're starting to see that normal track of rain coming through. But for those early rains that came in,
okay, let's be comfortable with the 50-50. Right, just assume we're comfortable with 50-50. About the other 50 though, we have a majority going to our agriculture irrigation system.
Correct.
A big majority, like 80-85% you mentioned last time, right? And then we're talking about 20% being used for
domestic,
for day-to-day life,
right?
Domestic use, right? Okay, very good. Another word, we're trying to focus ourselves. As long as we can control our 20%, can we say better off?
Absolutely. If we can better manage that, it's just like Ken is talking about with the watershed and how dry it was. I think next year, if we want to talk, because we always talk about the negative stuff on the show, the positive thing is that now that we've gotten this year, next year, if we get an average or above average year, we would expect our capture amounts to go back to where they used to be, or close to it.
Because the land got some kind of relatively saturated, right?
The big part of what Ken talks about, where it goes to nature or goes for other things, is when you have these big, what they called the atmospheric river that kind of bypassed us. We got some of it, but it really hit Northern California. You see these huge flows through the Delta out to the San Francisco Bay, or when Oroville Dam was overflowing. If we could capture 2 or 3 days of that, we could probably fill all of the basins in Southern California in one day, but it's just the logistics of being able to do that.
Trying to balance where that water's going. It's very difficult to move that water south and not affect the environment and have enough infrastructure.
Does it have anything to do with the population increase or environmental condition getting?
Well, yes, it does. If you look at California in terms of where that water is going, in terms of the environment takes a great deal of the water that we have. So we need to do that. Mother Nature needs to be restored, and we need to have that water going. What we're trying to do is just cap off that little bit of water that we can and move it further south. That's really important, that we have strategies to do that, and getting the money to build the infrastructure to move that water south is what we're trying to work for all the time, is so that we can do that. Now, of course, conservation still plays a role in that. Recycled water plays a role in that, and using as much of that as we can. Even desalinization as we move forward is going to play a bigger role in Southern California's water picture. But all of those things together is what's going to make us whole in Southern California. Population, most of our water infrastructure was actually developed in the 1960s, 50s, 60s, and into the early 70s. That was when our population was 20 million people.
Remember my map?
Yeah, that's right.
That was 51.
Yeah,
right.
And that was kind of a prediction of where all these water structures were going to go. Well, those have been built, and they were built for a population of California of about 20 million people. Well, now we're pushing 40 million people, and we've got essentially
Double
the
the
same
amount.
System. So yeah, it makes a difference.
Speaking of the system, speaking of the infrastructure, though, you remember last time we talked about the water bond, the water tax money, right? The water special measure. So, did you see a security? Did you see that money spent your way?
When they put together a bond, it's broken up into quite a few categories. And one of the things that the last bond concentrated a lot on was storage, surface storage projects, and other projects that have been talked about in Northern California. And then the other thing was there's quite a bit. There's some going to water quality to clean up the water we have, and then if you've been in Sacramento lately, there's a big concern with what they call disadvantaged communities, that folks that are in a below average income areas are seeing the same kind of benefits from the bond. So that's where to me, those were like three of the highlighted areas, but there are probably how many?
Here in the San Gabriel Valley, remember the bond was $7.4 billion. $2.7 billion of that immediately goes towards storage projects. We're talking, most people talk about Temperance Flats, which is in the San Joaquin Valley, and Sites Reservoir, which is above Sacramento. Those two reservoirs are going to use all of that, essentially $2.7 billion. But there were other pots of money, as Tony mentioned, that go towards other things. And there's a pot of money in there for conservation. There's a pot of money in there for groundwater. There's other monies. Of the money that's delegated for groundwater, we've got applications in here in the San Gabriel Valley for about $30 million worth of projects.
Well, that's
and those are projects there that are going to help us be able to capture and use more water here in the San Gabriel Valley to kind of tune things up. The reason it sounds low is because Southern Californians have been investing in water infrastructure much more than the Central California folks and the Northern California folks.
Because we have to.
And because we've had to. That's exactly right. And so what's happening is now they're trying to catch up with us, and they're trying to put in the kinds of systems that we have here. So the greater sum of the money is going to end up going up there, not down to Southern California. So the projects that we're working on are water quality projects to take water of low quality and improve it. There's some water going towards recycled water projects in Southern California, water going towards even some desalinization projects.
Yes.
And of course there's some going to conservation. So, but I would say 2/3 of that $7.4 billion, if not more, is going to end up finding its way north of that Tehachapi's. That is the area, the San Joaquin Valley and north.
In other words, there is a little money to improve, and the $7.5 billion is working, even though not that much, not enough, but working.
Well, one of the things that is embedded within that, any of the water supply projects are stormwater enhancement projects. So that means that it has to rain for you to capture that extra water. So when there's a higher flow, then you capture more. None of the money for those supply projects talk about what we've addressed much, the issue that Ken brought up about how the water, when there's a lot of water in the north, how do we get it to the south and store it? And so that's really I think what the focus is going to be for us when we go to Sacramento, and what our message is going to be. It's interesting, I was up there last week and one of the representatives said, what would you do if you were in charge of everything? I said, we'd maximize recycled water first, because it's here, and then,
all right,
you know.
Very good. Okay, very good. That sounds good. And I see some lights already. My dear audience, so let's take a very short moment now. Today with me are two wonderful water authorities. We have Mr. Tony Zampiello, a water master of Southern California, and we have Ken Manning, Water Quality Authority of California. Both of them are talking about the water situation to answer to those questions that my audience is after watching this many shows who made me the water man already. That California drought is not over, and the situation a little better, but in the long run, we got to keep up with the good work. All right, so let's take a very short moment out. When we come back, we'll continue finding what are we doing, what are we going to do this coming summer. Summer is coming. Tony just mentioned about recycling, and you mentioned about water quality kind of a purification thing, including desalinization stuff. Putting all together, we'll see what we're going to do to be busy with this coming summer. Stay with us, please. Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the discussion. It's a big discussion about our livelihood. And one of the basic, very basic, is our water. Water, 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 water. I believe, as long as I recall on the show, the hardest show I host is about water. And since I have done so many water shows, my audiences keep asking me, sending emails, or tweet me, or even send me WeChat, or call me, say, hey Jack, how's water doing? And every time we have a little rain, say, how about now? Meaning that it is time for me to turn the crying baby to the mother. The mother being Mr. Tony Zampiello of Watermaster California, and the mother being Ken Manning of the Water Quality Authority. Once again, welcome back to the show. Sure. I'm quite satisfied with the previous two segments because they both answered my question. Question being, number one, the drought is not over. And if you keep talking about drought, you would be better asking yourself, were you okay during the drought years with the mandate? If the answer is yes, the second question is, why not continue?
That's right.
Right? And then we answered about why are we in the pit, as always. Every time there is something, we are the one confronted. Right? Okay, now, the third segment, I want to stretch our focus to this summer, this coming summer, right after a quote-unquote wet winter. And now we are entering the summer. What do we plan to do? And what shall we be doing, and why with our water, please?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we need to keep in mind is with the amount that we have been able to store, that we know that by next fall we may not lose any ground, but we're not going to gain any ground. So it was really a good thing that we had this year. You know, the hope is that we have at least an average year of rain next year, hopefully above average. And then the other thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to negotiate with the metropolitan water districts of Southern California, who has access to some of the water in Northern California, to see if they won't bring it down, bring some water that we would maybe buy in the future, put it in the ground now, and then we will buy it year to year to help us with the groundwater levels as well.
I see.
But that deal is still not...
Kind of making them reserve for us.
Right.
Right? At the time we need.
Yes, because it's water we would buy maybe 3 years out. Why not put it here now, and then we'll agree to buy it when we we pump it out.
See, in the past, what happens is if we overdraft or if we use more water than we normally would, we would then go back and buy the water and then bring it into Southern California. And what Tony's describing is a whole new take on it. Proactively putting water in the ground, knowing that we're going to overdraft the basin. That's an entirely different way of approaching water management in Southern California than what's been done in the past. This is all brand new, so we have to work with our water suppliers, which is the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California and the state water contractors, to move that water south and then get it into the basin, knowing that 7 out of the next 10 years are going to be dry. We know we're going to use it. That's not a question.
In other words, in between respond to emergency and a plan for longer term, we would rather do the latter.
Yes.
Right? Even though we do have a plan to respond to emergency, we would rather do it while time still allows to plan for the longer run.
Yeah, and the water companies are investing, and this is what Tony's been working on now for a couple of years, getting the water companies to understand that they need to invest now in that water so that they have that water available to them. And they've all changed their mind. This drought has really, I think, brought them around to the idea that they need to be proactive in the idea of bringing water into Southern California.
That reminds me of one thing. I wonder if it is by the same philosophy, same logic. I used to have an account with a bank, a small bank, very small bank. When I do my normal deposit or drawings, okay, right? And when I do certain numbers, which is bigger than normal, they say I need to call them for 24 hours beforehand to get them prepared. Now you're calling the bank, say, hey, next year I'm going to need extra XYZ amount of water, and keep that for me.
That's right.
Something like that.
Very much like that, yes.
Okay, very good.
And the other advantage to us in that instance is, let's say, the other thing that concerns us as being in the water business for so many years is the fact that we haven't concentrated a lot because there haven't been any big earthquakes in the state, but California's an earthquake state. And if the water's here and in the ground, instead of 400, 500 miles away, if the aqueduct fails or something else should happen, it's here instead of us having to wait for the repairs.
Good point.
So that's what.
That's an even longer plan.
Yeah.
Longer vision.
Yeah. The system that we're dealing with here in Southern California for delivery of water is very fragile. And we know that system's going to be damaged. Some pipes are going to break, some of the concrete delivery systems are going to break, and it's going to take up to 6 months or longer to repair those. So we've got to have at least 6 months worth of reserves here locally that we can draw on at that point in time. And I think right now I can honestly say that we have that, but as population grows and things change, we got to make sure that that's always maintained.
I had an interview with a USC seismologist for twice already. The answer for both interviews saying that exactly quote unquote from you, it is not whether or not we're going to have an earthquake. It is about when.
Yeah.
Should it be next minute? Should it be next decade?
Yeah.
Who knows, right?
Who knows?
So my question is, I believe that's also a concern of one of my email audiences. What if California is hit by a earthquake, major earthquake? Say, when they say major, their definition by the seismologists was 7.6 by Richter scale.
Right.
That's
So-
big. That's a big earthquake.
No, that's quite big, right?
Yeah.
7.6 is quite big. And most likely they say when it does happen, it should be even bigger than that because the condition of the bed we're sitting on, which is according to his determination, a jello, like a jello
Right.
of sand or something. Okay, now, question is that when something of that size hit California, how are we going to secure our water?
Well, the good news is that for many years, the water managers in each agency, city, even the smaller water districts have developed a network, an emergency network, where they share lists of their equipment, of who their local responders, fire departments are, and they actually have set up a system that it's what's called an emergency operations center. So under certain conditions, even let's say next year we get a lot of rain, they can activate those EOCs, and they have agreements in place where they can work with each other. The biggest thing that we're talking about is that, just like we've been saying in the drought, you can't manufacture water. So the idea is, obviously the first thing in an earthquake would be to make sure that the water left in the systems is safe, that nobody gets sick or anything from dirt or anything getting into the system.
When we say earthquake, we're talking about the damage that earthquake should cause.
Yeah.
Does it cause more to the above ground?
No, when it shifts,
to underground.
It depends on the fault, but it can shift. It can shift as far as 1,000 feet down below. So the pipes are very strong when they're held where they're at. But if the ground shifts, or if you have an above ground facility, even if it goes back to where it was and it moves, there's the risk of breaking.
You got to understand the plumbing in California. You've got the delivery system that's delivering water from Northern California to Southern California, and that helps us with about 30% of the water that we use in Southern California annually. That is what we're talking about, where we could have some breaks and that we need time to recover. In the San Gabriel Valley, the domestic water systems, most of those will stay intact, but there will be some damage that will have to be looked at and found out where it is. But most of the delivery systems to homes, the domestic stuff, that's all going to be intact, and so we're not as worried about that. It's the main big pipes. For instance, there are pipes running through. People probably don't even realize this. There are pipes that are as big as 12 feet in diameter running through Southern California, delivering water at high pressure, not just by gravity, under high pressure. So you get a break in those pipes, you could wipe out a half of a neighborhood.
Shooting out, yeah. And we see pictures, or even the San Francisco earthquake of 1903, we see land kind of dislocate. I mean, disjoint themselves by far like that, and no pipe will hold that kind of a dislocation.
No.
Well, you have to think about it too. Ken mentioned that they're 12 feet in diameter. You just don't go to Home Depot and buy a 12-foot pipe. They have to be custom made. So that it's all time, and all of that timing is what is a concern for those long-range deliveries.
All right, good. And at the water board, there's a lot to consider of. To me, a water is a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, or whatever. That's the kind of water, or even the largest amount is my bath water. And as a matter of fact, a lot bigger than that, there are lots of issues to talk about. Earthquake is a concern, it's quite a concern. And it is not only confirmed by our seismologists at UCLA, and both UCLA and USC. I believe USC is stronger in that research, and also confirmed by our water authorities, saying that once that happened, we try to control the situation as much as we can, but Mother Nature has to take. Right? Okay, very good. And we mentioned just now about recycling, about desalinization, and other ways of reclaiming water. So when we come back, we'll check about the necessities and possibilities or practicalities of those areas. Stay with us, please. Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to the East-West Show. Jack Chow with my friend Tony Zampiello and also my friend Ken Manning. They're both at Water Authorities of California, talking about a water situation. And we did check with them about the situation that we had a wet winter. Is the drought over? The answer is no. And we did check about what we are doing now with the infrastructure-wise to deal with Northern California about our future water, and see as we can do something. We're trying to push that way to enlarge our capability of reserving. And number three, we're talking about in terms of a natural disaster, such as the earthquake, if hit, are we prepared? The answer is yes, but the damage is going to be devastating.
Yeah.
Right, good. Talking about the ways of possible reclaiming water, we have recycled, we have desalinization, we have even other ways. Which are the ones that you guys are working at this moment?
Well, there are a number of different strategies where we're reclaiming water. Right here in the San Gabriel Valley, we have the largest groundwater cleanup program for polluted groundwater anywhere in the country. So people have heard about Flint, Michigan, and some of the other problems where they've had trouble with water. Right here in the San Gabriel Valley, we've been dealing with it now for over 25 years. But there's also recycled water, which is water that's been used once. We can't afford to take water, use it once, and throw it away. Not in Southern California. So we have to drop strategies where we can take that water, clean it, and put it back into the groundwater, and then be able to use it a second or third or fourth time. Orange County is doing a great deal of work in that. They take over 50% of the water that goes into their sewer system is now being reclaimed in Orange County and put back into their groundwater basin and reused.
When you say used water, how do you define used water? What kind of water are they?
Well, it's water that's been used in the home or an industry, and it's going into the sewer system and then going to a treatment facility. And most of the time people think that water is, and it is, being treated and then sent out to the ocean. And that's the problem where we need to stop. We need to quit sending it out to the ocean. We need to take that water, recapture it. This isn't new science. This is all stuff. I mean, you think about the astronauts up in space. They're reusing that water over and over and over again. This is the same technology as that. We can do that down here, take that water, put it back into our groundwater where it blends with native waters, and then repump that water back up and use it. And you can't tell the difference.
And cost effective?
It's currently long term. It's becoming cost effective now with the technology. And that, the other thing that as Ken points out, what would happen before we'd put it back in the ground is there would be an added level of treatment that happens now. But there's 150 million gallons a day that the Sand District alone discharges to the ocean that we could capture. Now, the challenges are that you need to get it where it's needed, and if it's way down by the ocean, to bring it up to our basin, you'd have to build a pipeline, and you'd have to use the energy to push it forward. And there are projects on the table now to do that. What's happening at this point is trying to put together who would be part of the customer base, who would pay that amount, how much we could get in grants or from the federal government, and what the feasibility of doing it would be. But with that amount, it could make up, those plants put out enough to make up all of the imported water that we buy.
So end of the day is not a technical issue, it is a money issue.
Yes.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a money issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's even getting easier as time goes on, because the cost of bringing water from Northern California down to Southern California is getting more expensive. And that's the cost of water that you always judge those projects against.
Yeah, you're right. A quotation from Tony: we don't manufacture water. We can't produce water. So we can only treat water. Because water is a gift from Mother Nature. Is water, well, Mother Nature has only a certain quantity of water. Only depends on certain time and what is given to who, to where, in what form, like that kind, right? So now, and he mentioned about desalinization.
Yes.
So is that a practical way of doing, or is that something that you are doing?
I think right now there are, we belong to agencies that some of the members that are along the coast are doing it, are pursuing it, because they're right there. Like think about Manhattan Beach or some of these beach cities that use the supply now. They're right there. They've got the ocean that they can pull from. It's more energy intensive. It's a higher level of treatment. And I think one of the biggest things now, as Ken said, the technology's there, but the other factor with desalinization is what people like the Coastal Commission and other folks are concerned, how you draw it in, how you impact the environment when you do that. but it's feasible. For us, it would probably make more sense if we were to trade and for them to, like, if they're on the same source as us, like the state water, we would maybe help them invest in their system, and then they would give us more access to the state water instead of trying to build a pipeline from the ocean all the way up.
So San Gabriel Valley residents would get more state water, but people at the coast would get more desalination product water. But we would help them pay for it because they're helping us get a more secure supply of water.
In other words, they get a problem resolved locally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Relatively by geography, and you are making the coastal people more dependable on the desalination, and also in the center of the basin, though.
Yes.
With your system.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, Ken mentioned earlier the 3 out of 10 years in availability. If you can develop those sources, they're not subject to that kind of fluctuation in availability.
You're right.
So
the ocean always there.
Yeah.
The decision has to be made to say, what is that reliability worth? How much more is that worth? During the drought, in the middle of the drought, you could sure sell it a lot easier than
Daily
maybe.
usage is only such.
Yeah. Now
The ocean is there.
There are 12 existing desalination plants in California along the coast now. You don't think about it, like for instance in Catalina. You know, they use desalination.
I really think of
extensively.
someday pay a visit to a desalination plant, whereby I want to taste a seawater,
Sure.
a cup of seawater, not a cup, or maybe a cup of the desalinationized,
Yeah.
desalinized water.
Yeah.
And I want to experience the differences.
I'll tell you what you'll find. It won't taste any different than the water you're getting now.
Yeah.
It does. It's exactly the same. The largest desalination plant was just opened within the last year in San Diego. It's actually located in Carlsbad, and it provides about 8% of the water used in San Diego County.
Oh,
It's about 1 million gallons a day.
Okay.
But another impressive plant is the Orange County recycled water, groundwater recharge plant. That's very,
Cutting edge.
That's very impressive too.
About 10 years ago, I went to the City Hall, Cerritos, and I learned from my friend Laura Lee. She was back then a council member of that city, that the about 95% of the usage of the whole City Hall is from used water, recycled used water.
Yeah.
And they did it well. And then they have some surplus. They sold their treated water to neighboring cities.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they made some money.
Yeah.
Good thing, right?
Yeah.
Good thing. Okay, that automatically leads to our question, my last question. What do you call upon my audiences to do or keep on doing during this coming summer, please?
Well, to keep up the good work. I mean, the last 2 years, what has really saved us to where we didn't pull more out of the storage is that people really buckled down and conserved. And so my message to the consumers is that yes, we've started to see things turn around with the rain. We don't know what's going to happen next winter, and so we need to be in the same mindset that they were last summer as far as conserving water and everything. And as you said, you know, the lifestyles weren't that impacted, but we were able to get a huge benefit from it.
Okay, very good. And you, Ben?
Well, it's, same thing as Tony, but let me emphasize, is not just continue to do what you were doing, but also look for ways that you can save water, because for an average home in Southern California, still 65–70% of the water they're using is outside the home in the landscape. So for those people who have already changed out their landscape to a more water drought tolerant landscape, that's kudos to them. But those who haven't, start looking at that as something they could do to save water. Those are the kind of things that are really going to help us over the long run. This last year, the residents of Southern California saved about 25% this last year. Now, because we've had rain, that's starting to inch up to where now it's about 20% of what it was in 2013. We need to keep it in that 20 to 25% of that benchmark year of 2013. That's what we're shooting for.
In other words, we want to keep that in mind. Those days are gone.
Yes.
Those days I mentioned last time, when the summertime kind of bikini girls kind of flashing with the water to play with water hose and stuff like that. Those days are gone. Like the song says, "Gone are the day my heart was young and gay," like that kind of, right? Yeah. So we want to conserve. Try to do your part. My dear audience, we cannot do big things. We can do small things. However small, together, if you put together, they are big. So I owe my credit to Mr. Kim Manning, the Water Authority of California, and also Mr. Tony Zampiano, or Water Master of California. Both gave us lots of information about the water. And thanks to my audience, especially those of you who send me email asking about water, and thank you for keep reminding me about that subject. So we will come back probably this summer, midsummer.
Sure.
Midsummer, to let us know about how we are doing by then. So wait to see more result. Okay. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much, and thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Glad to be here.
We'll see you next time.